week, we talked about Pharaoh persecuting Israel. And that Pharaoh, as we find out in Exodus, that Pharaoh dies. That would be the Pharaoh that Moses was raised under. The Pharaoh that that Pharaoh reigned while Moses was being raised in Pharaoh's house. Now we're talking about a completely separate Pharaoh who opposes Israel. We're going to talk about Pharaoh's magicians recognize God's hands. God's hand. Pharaoh's officials fear Moses' God. And Israel plunders the Egyptians. We're going to be in Exodus 5, chapters 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 today. So we're going to kind of progress through the book of Exodus this morning. Our central truth is that discerning and yielding to God's plan helps us choose wisely. Our focus today should be to acknowledge and give thanks to God for carrying out His plans for His people in spite of opposition. A lot of times it doesn't seem like we're going to get delivered. A lot of times it doesn't seem like we're going to be let out. A lot of times it doesn't seem like it's going to go in our favor. But if we trust the hand of God, that He's got it all under control, that no matter what comes around us, we can see the hand of God moving. I think that's the important part. As trouble comes, step back and don't look at the trouble, but see, God, show me where your hand is in this. Because it looks like trouble, but show me where your hand is in this. And I think that is a good way to sustain all the opposition or the trouble that you're in. Evangelism emphasis is recognizing God's majesty can lead sinners to repentance. And the golden text comes from Exodus 10. Pharaoh's servant said unto him, How long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? And basically at this point, the servants of Pharaoh had got tired of everything that had come upon them because Pharaoh was just so defiant against God. And his servants are trying to petition him and say, will you not just let the men go? Because we are utterly destroyed at this point. It says this lesson presents us with the defining event in history of Israel, the Exodus. From this time forward, their calendar would be based on the Exodus. Even today, almost 3,500 years later, it's important that we know time, biblical time. I taught that or preached that a couple weeks ago. It is important that we know how far back in history this is. It wasn't billions of years ago. This isn't so far gone that we can't touch it or see the descendants of it or see what happened. So even today, almost 3,500 years later, the Jewish people look back to this event as their beginning as a nation. Second paragraph says, God openly confronted Pharaoh and the false gods of Egypt through a series of supernatural demonstrations. The 10 plagues of Egypt. The third to the last sentence on the commentary says, these acts of God culminated in the Passover and Israel's deliverance from Egypt. Also, it reminds us of the necessity of obedience to God. The next page says, God will accomplish His purpose and plan. Whether we experience His blessing in it or His judgment depends on how we respond to His commands. And we're going to see that. But I heard a saying this week, and I thought it was profound, and I hope you guys find it as profound as I do. But I heard that believing in God and not obeying the Word is exactly what Satan does. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of people who believe there is a God, but don't obey the Word. I know there are a lot of Christians that believe in God, but don't obey the Word. And that makes you no better than Satan. Because Satan believes in God, just doesn't follow His commandments. So I thought, wow, that's a profound way of looking at it, that we are no better than Satan if we believe in God and don't obey His commandments.
That's why from generation, or from Genesis to Revelation, that's why I think that we need to know every story. Mm-hmm. It's not a story that every fact about every person, everything that went on, because God didn't put it in there for it just to be in there.
Right.
It's actually there's a message, somebody says, search the scriptures, for in them you think
Think.
you have eternal life.
You think you have eternal life. Yeah, I agree. All right, Pharaoh's magicians recognize God's hand. Exodus 5. We're going to be at Exodus chapter 5 and 7 in this one. And I'm going to stop and break them up since it's a lot to read. Chapter 5 starts at verse 1. It says, And afterwards Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, Who is this Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. I'm going to stop right there because that's just chapter 5 verses. So God has commanded Moses and Aaron to go in before them. The former Pharaoh has died. Moses has experienced the burning bush in the wilderness. Moses has pled with God and said, I can't do this. I don't speak real well. Aaron is now sent with him to accompany him on this journey and accomplish the purpose of God. So they're going before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, Who is the Lord? And I think that this is the first picture that we can draw of this new Pharaoh. You know, a lot of times when a new president takes office, we're waiting on him to make that first big move, or her, to make that first big move that defines who they are. And I think this is our first good glimpse at this leader and who he is, because his response was, Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I think that he could have asked Moses and Aaron in that moment. He had a choice. He could have said, Who is the Lord? And asked Moses and Aaron, Who is the Lord? Maybe he didn't know who God was. And he had the opportunity then to look at Moses and Aaron and say, Who is the Lord? But he chose to say, Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? He made a choice as a leader that day, which defined what his leadership would be known for. And ultimately his destiny, exactly. So he could have very easily formed that same question, earnestly asking Moses and Aaron, Who is the Lord? Who is this Lord you speak of? And been educated on it. But instead he chose to say, Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? So he's making his first big move here. Chapter 7 starts at verse 10. It says, And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rod. It says in verse 13, And he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. So God has commanded Moses and Aaron, I need you to go before Pharaoh, and I want you to take your rod, and I want you to cast it down in front of Pharaoh, and when you do, it's going to turn into a serpent. And what I think is funny is God doesn't say, now they're also going to cast down their rods. Right? So a lot of times we've got in our mind that as we're heading into a situation, like I'm the big dog here. Right. I'm going to go in, I'm going to throw this rod down, and it's going to turn into a serpent. Can you imagine that when Moses and Aaron did exactly what God told them to do, and they went in and threw down the serpent in the floor, that they maybe was a little taken aback when other men, multiple men, come and throw their rods down, and they become serpents. I mean, think about that. Like, you're thinking, I'm going in this with the upper hand. I'm going to go in and throw the rod down. I've got God. And the serpents, it said that Aaron's serpent swallowed all of the rest of their serpents. So God was demonstrating his power there in front of Pharaoh. No one is affected, except for the magicians have now lost their rods because they've now been consumed, which I think is what God wants us to do. You see, when God realizes that Carrie's got some things in her life that are coming before God, God doesn't want to hurt Carrie. Right. God wants to take those things out of Carrie's path. Right. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like God was saying, if I can get these swords, if I can get these rods from the magicians he's not going to respond. His heart will be hardened. His heart will be hardened. And I think about serpents. This is the first time we're seeing serpents since the garden. And I think about Moses and Aaron, like, what went through their mind when God said, throw the rod down, and it'll be as a serpent. You know, these people had to have been told about what happened in the garden. Like, you want to throw a rod down and it turned into a serpent? I know you don't like snakes, do you? Right?
Moses definitely was told about it.
Yeah.
He's the one that wrote it.
Exactly. He's the one that wrote it. So now he's throwing down, or Aaron's throwing down a rod, and it's turning into a serpent. This is the first time we see the serpent. But what I think is cool about this is the serpent that's led by God. You know, because Lucifer used to be led by God, you know. And I think it's all spiritual. I think God is saying you can choose to be on my side or you can choose to be on that side. And if you're on that side, it doesn't no matter how many serpents you throw down in front of me, the serpent that I control is stronger than all of them. And so I just think it's fascinating that it was serpents that we were using. And these people, these magicians, were behaving as God, which is exactly what Lucifer did. He exalted himself as God. And these magicians come into the room and they're like, oh, what? You got one serpent? Here's 5 rods and 5 serpents. Whatever you can do, we can do. Right. Exalting themselves as gods, just like the same God that was commanding Aaron's rod. And so they were exalting themselves as God. And it says, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart, that he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. And he hardened Pharaoh's heart. Anybody ever read the story of the 10 plagues? And thought, why did God keep hardening Pharaoh's heart? Like, kind of seems unfair, don't it? Why does the Bible say, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart? And he hardened Pharaoh's heart. So I was thinking about that this week, and I was like, you know, that almost seems... It's like a bill, you know? You have a bill, and it's due, but you don't have the money to pay it. So you don't pay it, and they tack on charges, right? Yeah. So now you don't only owe what you owe, but now you owe charges, right? And if you couldn't pay the bill in the first place, what makes them think that you would pay the bill plus the charges, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so I'm thinking, God, if Pharaoh's struggling to see you anyways, then he's struggling to see you. Now you're hardening his heart. He was struggling to see you in the first place. Right. So why would you tack on more to him? And so I was searching for that this week, and I was like, wow. And it come to me. I don't think that it's what we think it is at all. I don't think that God was actually hardening Pharaoh's heart. I think about the service. Somebody might walk in here today and be lost. Yeah. And Joey deliver a message that convicts them. Pharaoh knew the truth as soon as that one serpent swallowed the 5. Absolutely. The truth was exposed. His is greater than what I have. Right. What he has is greater than what I have. And he had a choice. He had a choice then to repent and turn. He had a choice. But he didn't. He chose indignantly to be your power. You want to do it with 1? I can do it with 5. Right. Go toe-to-toe with the Lord. And when you preach a sermon that pierces someone's heart, and they decide to go toe-to-toe with God, I don't need you. Right. They harden their heart. And it's not that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It was the choice God made, the choice, the action that God did, trying to show his sovereignty, trying to show his power, trying to get Pharaoh to choose right. And Pharaoh decides, I don't want it. So he hardened his heart. It wasn't that God hardened his heart, but what God did hardened Pharaoh's heart because of the choice Pharaoh made. Because I think about the song Carrie sings, how can I not be changed? How can we not be changed in the presence of God? Unless, of course, we don't want to be. And if we don't want to be, you're either going to soften up or you're going to get hard. And that's the deal. And every time you choose to walk out of that door without coming to the knowledge, to acknowledge that He is God, you are hardening your heart against God. And every time it's going to get harder and harder for God to reach you because you have made a choice. I think about the sun. I can lay out on the sidewalk a tart that you put in a tart burner. And I can lay out some kind of craft that the kids have made by clay out there. And the same sun that will soften the melt will harden the clay. The same word that he preaches from the pulpit that softens and breaks hearts will harden others.
Absolutely.
And Pharaoh made a choice that day. And when he chose, his heart was hardened. His heart was hardened. And Moses and Aaron, this is 7 verse 20. And Moses and Aaron did so, as the Lord commanded. And he lifted up the rod and smote the waters. See, there's been a gap between 13 and 20, and God's given them more commandments, more things to do. They smote the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. And the fish that was in the river died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink the water of the river. And there was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. Neither did he hearken unto them, as the Lord had said. Again, we see another instance here, and you see in the scripture that Moses and Aaron did so. God just wants us to be obedient. God just wants us to do what he tells us to do. And Moses and Aaron did so, and they turned the water into blood. Now, I think it's interesting that they took out the serpents. God was trying to use his power against their power. Let me show you that my power is greater than any power you have. Now he says, God did not want to harm these people. God's not willing that any perish. He didn't want to harm them. So the next thing he did was give them in the resource. This is the Nile River. Right. This is commerce. This is trade. For that water to be turned to blood, no one's going to want to get in it. No one's going to be able to drink it. It's now killed all the fish, which were no doubt part of their commerce. The fish are now dead. And why are they dead? And why do we see blood? Because any time there's objection to God, there has to be death. And there has to be blood. So now we see the water turn to blood, and the fish in the river die.
I think if you think about it, you can go all the way back to what he said. Who is the Lord?
Yeah.
That I should obey.
Right.
I think this is an illustration or a demonstration of the power of God. God said, you want to know who I am?
Absolutely. I'll show you.
Yeah.
And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Absolutely.
He can get your attention.
Absolutely.
If you will not harden your heart and give an ear to hear.
When the question comes out, who is the Lord? That I should.
God heard that.
God heard that. And now he sees who God is.
God truthfully wanted Pharaoh to let his people go. And that would be to that. I'll let you do you.
Right.
You can choose to serve me or not. Just let the people go. And had he just let him go, I think things would have been calm. But it was the resistance. It was the complete disregard to the authority, to the power of God that was clearly being displayed.
Each time the power got greater.
Got greater. And affected, again, power versus power. God says, you can have my power. Here's my power. Here's what it can do. It can swallow all your serpents. And this power is yours. But you got to believe on me. You won't believe on me? I'll take away your resources.
Yep.
You have to learn to live without your resources. I see here it says in verse 22, this is crazy to me, and we're going to talk about it more in a minute, but I want you to be aware of it now as we read it every time. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. Now it makes complete and total sense to me that Aaron throws down his rod, and it turns into a serpent, and then the magicians would want to throw down their rods and say, what you have is greater than what we have. But what they're doing now and continually only hurts them. See, when Moses and Aaron turned the water into blood, it says if they've already turned all the waters in the river to blood, it says in verse 22 that the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. Well, all the river water has been turned to blood. So I can imagine these people being like, well, there's no more river out there to turn to blood. Blood. See, I can do it too.
Yep.
I can turn water to blood. You think you can turn water? I can turn water to blood. And by doing that, they were eliminating their own resources.
Absolutely.
They weren't helping their cause. At least with the serpents, they were trying to prove we're just as powerful. But with the water, it's like, that's the last little bit of water we got. He turned the rivers to blood. Now they're over here turning water that's laying in a basin to blood. Because they had to be able to prove that they too could do what the Lord was doing.
And every time it happened, it hardened Pharaoh's heart that much more.
Yeah.
Thinking that, not understanding that it was the power of God that was doing this thing,
Right.
doing these things, because their magicians could imitate. That's just like Satan. He imitates God. God is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Satan is a roaring lion. I mean, he just wants to imitate everything that God does.
Absolutely.
If you're not careful, there's always, and that's why I don't think you can go based solely off of the sign. Because if you go based solely off of what you see and the manifestation,
Right.
the enemy can manifest himself sometimes to look
As an
exactly
angel,
the same as what God has shown.
Absolutely.
Exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Same with the woman, the one that followed when they were in the,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
It says that the men of God.
Saying the right things
preach
the wrong
the word
way.
of God.
they wasn't mad at her. They were mad at what was in her.
Absolutely.
They were demonstrating was trying to imitate
Absolutely.
her mock.
And I go back to what Jordan's saying and taking what you're bringing up, and I think how easy, if we're not able to discern,
Right.
we just see the manifestation, then we hear this woman and we think she's on our side.
Yeah.
And so we just let her in. You know the area here, you know the people here, can you help us?
Right.
What if Paul had made her a part of the team, as opposed to discerning just because she's saying the right
Right
thing?
there, yeah.
Something is wrong. What is it? I've heard you say it before, Jordan. It's not the opposite that you have to try and figure out. It's the almost.
Discernment is not knowing right from wrong. It's discerning is knowing what's right from what's almost right.
Almost right. Yeah. It's easy to tell what's right from wrong. It's not easy to tell what's
Right from almost
right
right.
from almost right. It's counterfeit. And any counterfeit money looks almost identical to the real thing. It's counterfeit. Frogs and lice. Moving over. Exodus chapter 8. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and frogs came up. But they'd been given another commandment of God, another command of God, another instruction of God. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt. And the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments and brought up frogs from the land of Egypt. I don't think it was a question at this point as to whether Pharaoh understood that the power he was dealing with was greater than the power he had. I don't think it was an understanding. But what I can't understand here, and I told you guys that they turned the water to blood, and the magicians turned other water to blood with their enchantments. Now they've brought up frogs out of this water. The frogs came up and covered the land, and the magicians, like in my mind, I'm thinking, if you want to prove something, then why don't you make all the frogs disappear? You know what I mean? Like if you got power,
Right.
when God puts frogs everywhere, and you're trying to prove your power, why don't you get rid of all the frogs God put everywhere? But they didn't. And that's what we do. When we exalt ourselves against the knowledge of God, when we live in a society that is, we just keep circling and circling, they are only hurting themselves. And they can't see it. Their arrogance has blinded them that instead of trying to fix the problem that's being created, they're trying to prove that they can also do what God can do. And they're circling the drain. They are their own demise. They are creating bigger problems for themselves. It says in verse 17, and they did so. This is more instruction. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth. And it became lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And guess what they did? And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice. But they could not. So, I was reading this and I thought, they could not. So, we've already had the water turn to blood, we've already had frogs come up, and they could do those things. The serpent, they could turn the rod into a serpent, they could do those things. But now, God has commanded them to turn the dust of the earth into lice. And it says they tried, but could not. And I thought, now they've met their match. Now they've met something. He is doing something they cannot do. And I thought, why was God able to do this and they were not? And I went back to the dust of the earth. First of all, God formed us from the dust of the earth. Like He's the OG dust creator, right? So maybe because God is the only one who can make something out of nothing, they don't have that power. But then I'm also reminded that in the New Testament, when they went in and tried to take out the demons, they could not. They'd come as far as they could come. And God reminded them, because you're missing some of the power. And so now they have met their match with God here. Pharaoh's magicians have met their match with God here, or met their match in God. And that God is the creator from the dust. And that maybe no one else can create something from the dust. And if you guys have a totally different opinion of this, it's fine. But I was thinking, why was it that his magicians could do everything that he could do until it comes to the dust of the earth? I just want you to think about that for a second. Was it because only God can make things out of nothing? Was it because their power had ran out? Was it because they'd met their match here with God?
I think it's symbolic to how man was created. And we were created out of the dust of the earth. And if they were able to create life out of the dust of the earth, then why could they have not been able to create life out of the dust of the earth?
Right, and that's good. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with creating man out of dust. He took something that was dead and brought it to life. The dust was dead, but he is the creator of life. He is the maker of life. He is the giver of life. So I believe they had finally met their match. But I forgot to go over something. In between the frogs and the lice here, the commentary doesn't include this, but I think this is so important. They have become so overwhelmed with these frogs that it seems that Pharaoh is about to give in. And he goes to Moses and Aaron and he says, could you entreat your Lord to remove these frogs? And Moses says, yeah, I'll go on your behalf and pray to God. When would you like for me to do this? And he said, tomorrow. Isn't that stubborn? If you're in dire enough need to need help for something, if Kirby comes to me and I'm like, sure, when you want me to do it? Today, like right now, I need you.
What are you waiting on?
If you're in desperate enough need to ask for help,
Right.
chances are you need the help
Right
now. And they said, will you please entreat him? And I just think that's just so arrogant that he looks at him and says, come on. he was hardening his heart
Absolutely.
further and
Exalting
further
him,
and further.
exalting himself.
Yeah.
Think about the magicians and their sorcery. They know that it's all smoke and mirrors when they turn water into blood.
Mm-hmm.
They know that it's all smoke and mirrors when they throw their rod on the ground and it becomes serpents. They know that somewhere there is a serpent stashed away
Right.
to make it appear as something that it was never supposed
Right.
to be. They're trying to imitate God, but God's doing it. Moses is just being obedient. God's doing it through his own power. There's not a hidden serpent stashed away or a hidden barrel of blood to make the rivers turn to blood. But however, when the sorcerers are doing it, there's something hidden somewhere. It's sleight of hand. All that magic is smoke and mirrors. They're having you look over here, but actually the work's going on here. So I think deep down, now the magicians are getting intel and making themselves be exalted because Pharaoh's like, wow, that's amazing. You're doing what they're saying God
It's
did.
entertainment.
Absolutely.
Pharaoh was being entertained. It's the same thing
Absolutely.
we are doing every day. We're being
Absolutely.
entertained. Pharaoh kept them around because they were
Yes, sir.
pleasing to him.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, the magicians knew that they were fooling Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that there is tricks and gimmicks here. We're doing this kind of like, now you don't see it. You know, it's just sleight of hand. They know that it's somewhere. They know that what they're doing is all fake and it's phony. But until they get to the lice. And then that's when they're like, but why? Because we had never heard of lice. I don't know that lice was ever formed or created up to this moment. That's the reason they could imitate a frog. Because God created a frog in the garden. And Adam gave it a name. But lice, this comes from the dust. So it had never been created before. Satan is not a creator. The enemy could not recopy or imitate something that had never been done before.
Right.
And that, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Your message.
You're good. You're fine. I just take it back to in Egyptian. I don't know if you guys have ever even seen any Egyptian gods, but there's an Egyptian god of fertility. And the Egyptian god of fertility has a face of a frog. So I think just like the resource that God turned into blood, he's now saying, here's my power. Do you want my power? Because my power is greater than all your power. With the serpents, my one serpent has eaten all your serpents. You need your resource? You need nothing but me. I am the water.
Absolutely.
You need the resource? The resource is so important to you, let's turn it to blood. You choose not to trust in me for your fertility needs? Let me just, if you want to worship God, here's all kinds of gods you can worship. He's doing everything he can not to hurt Pharaoh's people. But we read it and we say, yeah, but he hardened Pharaoh's heart. No, he is giving him an out. And he's choosing not to take it. And every time he doesn't take it, his heart is hardened. Every time. It says, verse 19, then the magician said unto Pharaoh, this is the finger of God.
He's making stuff here.
There is, we really hadn't thought to do anything with dust. And you know what I think is funny? We're talking about dust. Dust. Out of dust came life. They can't do it. They can't create life.
No.
And their response is, surely this is the finger of God. Why not the hand? Why not the hand of God? You know what I'm reminded when they say the finger of God? When Jesus stepped down and wrote with his finger in the dust. This is the finger of God.
I'm reminded of the book of Daniel when handwriting on the wall.
Yes.
Just God trying his best to show you, hey, I've got more power than my finger.
Yeah. This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. Skipping over. Pharaoh's officials fear Moses' God. He's starting to get to those around Pharaoh. And you know, I think a loss in the family. And there's that one lost member in the family, and God starts to get to all the other ones around them. And the more that they see God working in this one's life,
Right. The more hardened they get in her.
well, why would God do it for them and not for me? And then they see it happen in this one's life, and it's the more these people, because you will be changed in the presence of God, and these people started changing their mind in the presence of God, and the more it changed the people around Pharaoh, the more Pharaoh was like, if I have to die on this hill alone, I'm going to die on this hill alone. And he had to get stronger and stronger within himself. He had to harden his heart more and more. Now, we don't talk about the Egyptian cattle dying and Israel's being left alone. We don't talk about flies, the flies and pestilence. We skip over those. We go into the boils and hail. And this is Exodus chapter 9. It said, and the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, take to you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it toward heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. And it shall become dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout all the land of Egypt. See, when the flies came, we didn't talk about it, but when the flies came, they swarmed all the animals, and they swarmed all the people. How many of you are irritated with the bees outside? You know, you can't do anything for the bees. It's irritating, right? So the flies began to swarm, but still no one was hurt. He's getting closer. God's having to get closer and closer to the people to afflict them. And then the pestilence comes, and that starts to hurt, because when the pestilence comes, it killed the cattle. It killed all the cattle except for the cattle that was in Goshen, or the cattle that Israel had. Excuse me. And so they had their cattle now. Now God has said, I'm tightening this circle around you, and I'm trying to do everything I can without taking Pam's life. So I start with her resources, and I start with her gods, and I start to try and break down. But eventually, if she won't listen to me, I'm going to have to get to her. Absolutely. And so now it started killing the livestock. And until now a bull has breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast. He's not killing people, but he sure is making you miserable.
Walk outside and the stench will knock you down.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you, it's amazing what a human body can get used to, can grow accustomed to. Like they just got used to the smell of blood and frogs running around everywhere and lice all in their head and their babies, and they just got used to all of it. It's just uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable. But they got used to it. But now they're starting to get in pain themselves. But not just uncomfortable, but very painful. I've never had a bull.
And I venture to tell you that if you die and go to hell, you've went through these series, maybe not these same things, but God will do everything He can to keep you from going to hell. He would. He's not willing that any would perish. He doesn't want anyone to die. It says in verse, at the end of verse 8, it says that he did this. Let Moses sprinkle the ash in the sight of Pharaoh. I hear, thou preparest a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Do this in the sight of Pharaoh, so that when the boils come, he won't say that they've been swept with some kind of plague. He will know where this came from. It can't, we don't know where the flu comes from when it kicks up. But we know where COVID came from, which kind of makes it a little harder to swallow. And God said, I want you to do this thing in the sight of Pharaoh so that he knows where this disease come from. It come from me. 11 says, and the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. For the boils was upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. So now not only can they not do what God did, they can't even stand in the presence of God and do anything. Because now they have been consumed. Until now they haven't had to do anything that considered themselves. And now they can't even stand in the presence of God and do anything, for the boils have now affected them.
And what made work more worse than it was that it didn't happen to the Jewish people.
No,
It happened to the...
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Just like the cattle. Their cattle died, their cattle did not.
Right.
I mean, you're drawing a line here in the sand. Which side are you on?
God said, let my people go. You all have bull. These
We're
people-
going to be walking around
You
here with us.
understand who God's people are. God's people are not like that.
And shouldn't it be the same way today? See, the problem is God's people are walking around in the same old mess
Go ahead.
that the people
Oh, you preaching.
bound in Egypt are walking around with.
Oh, you preaching. Go on.
Yeah, but it's a joke. This comes out of the mouth of joke. Don't pay attention that it's coming out of my mouth. This comes out of the mouth of joke. You can really sit down in a church venue
Right.
and sit down and look at the congregation of people. When you're ministering, you can
Oh,
literally
absolutely.
sit down in a venue and you can tell.
Which people are hungry and which people is falling on deaf ears.
Exactly. Which people are struggling, which people are failing, which people are, you're going through hell. And you see people that sit in there like, man, I'm blessed.
Absolutely.
We are blessed. You can literally separate the same way you could with the Egyptian boys and the Jewish people. You can literally separate the people in a congregation and tell who is who and who is acting like who.
I can remember a man by the name of Frank Adams that stood in that church over there. And he stood up every Sunday, and he was a tall man. I mean, he's probably close to 7 foot tall. And so when he raised his hands to praise the Lord, his hands would just about touch the ceiling. And I can remember as a kid that his praise was just something to watch. And then I can remember learning that he was in an automobile accident, which maybe he made a choice he shouldn't have made, or maybe he pulled out in front of somebody, I don't know. And anyways, that accident ended up that his wife died. And he was operating the car when his wife died. And Sunday rolled around, and he's still standing back there with his arms raised up.
Right.
And then, a couple years later, he's standing there. He's been standing there this whole time with his arms raised high. And his house burns, and he loses everything he has, every memory of his wife, everything that he can hold on to. And next Sunday rolled around, and he's standing in the back of his church with his arms raised high. That is how we have to be. We have to be blessed no matter what our circumstances are. And we have to look at the circumstances of others and say, and kind of say, thank God that that's not where I'm at right now.
Right.
But because I'm not over there, what can I do to help them that are over there?
Absolutely.
There should be a difference in the people in Egypt and the Israelites who are trying to get out of Egypt. There should be a difference in the people.
Be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the
Yes.
work of the Lord. Always means
Always.
never failing. Never, no matter what you're going through, I'm still the same. I'm still God.
Right.
So, not Joey. God saying, I'm still God. So, be ye steadfast.
I think a lot of times the reason we get, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think a lot of times the reason we get so far away from that mindset is, here's the middle ground. Straight is the gate, narrow is the way, right? But when our life is going great, and you're getting blessing after blessing after blessing, it's really easy to see yourself over here as doing something good.
Yep.
So when you lose it all, it's a what? The bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? But then, I think if we would ever stay in the middle ground and not exalt ourselves when things are going good, but exalt God when things are going good, then we're never too far away from the middle. You see what I'm saying? We're never too far. We've got to stay here, because something happens and we have everything and it gets jerked out from under us. We don't know how to praise here because we've never been on this side. We've always been on that side. We've always been on the good side of things. So when the bad side comes, we don't know how to serve God and survive the bad. But if you would just stay here the whole time, no matter when things are going great or when things are going bad, if you would just stay focused to serve God and to thank God and to not change your lifestyle or not change your appearance or not change who you are for anything,
Right.
then you're never too far away from God. And you can rejoice in the good, and you can still be close to God in the bad. But to stay, let the main thing be the main thing. It says in verse 16, "And in every deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to shew thee my power." God is telling Pharaoh, you wouldn't be king today if it weren't for me. And in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to shew thee in thee my power, and that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. As yet exaltest thou thyself against my people, that thou wilt not let them go. Behold, tomorrow, about this time, I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such hath not been in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Send therefore now, and gather thy cattle and all that thou hast in the field, for upon every man and beast which shall be found in the field, and shall not be brought home, the hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. He that feared the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his cattle flee into the houses. Now it's getting serious. God said, I'm getting ready to see the hail. And here's the thing. He's getting closer and closer. Getting closer and closer to trying to get Pam's attention. And now he's telling Pam, tomorrow.
Right.
Even giving her time to prepare.
Absolutely.
That's grace.
Absolutely.
That's mercy. After all these things, and you still won't serve me, tomorrow, if all of you and yours aren't in a house somewhere, you'll die.
Absolutely.
Give her time to prepare. And you know what I think? That's why I wanted to point out Pharaoh's tomorrow. Because when Pharaoh was begging God to relent, and they said, when do you want God to relent? He said, tomorrow will be fine. He was being arrogant. God is saying, tomorrow. Just like Pharaoh did. And now God is saying tomorrow. But God's tomorrow is showing grace. Is showing mercy. Tomorrow, these things are going to come. And if you are not, He's telling us the same thing today. The Lord is coming back.
Absolutely.
And if you are not safe, if you haven't come in the door, and you aren't safe inside, and He is abiding in you, then you'll die.
Well, let's say we'll do it tomorrow.
But we'll do it tomorrow. That's good. That's really
Right.
good. Really good. Tomorrow.
Today is the day.
Today is the day.
Choose
Plague.
you.
Yep. Plague of locusts. Exodus 10. God has just said again, let my people go. And He begins, verse 4, else. Or else. Let my people go. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, again the word, tomorrow. Now they've already lost all their cattle and all their people that they didn't bring into the house. And now He says, tomorrow I will bring locusts into thy coast, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. And they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy father nor thy father's fathers have seen, since the day they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's servants said unto him, how long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? Let my people go, or else tomorrow, because He's still willing to wait. That's still grace. That's still mercy. By now, they have to know that all of this is coming from God. And to not relent is just pure stubbornness. Romans 1:8 says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness. The wrath of God had been revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. They know the truth, but they're still choosing to do the unrighteous thing. who hold the truth in unrighteousness, for that which is known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it to them. God has showed himself to Pharaoh and the people of Egypt, but they're still choosing not to follow. Except for his servants now are saying, come on, like how much longer shall... You ever had a leader that just kept allowing bad things to happen to the people? And you think, how much worse can this get?
Right.
How much worse? That's why we are to pray for our leaders. These men should have been on their face before God, praying for Pharaoh's heart to be softened, praying for Pharaoh to hear the voice of God. Pray so that their circumstances would change. If we think that there's ever a time we should be praying for the leader of our nation, we should be praying. It's now. Because I don't really see how things could get much worse financially, could get much worse economically, could get much worse. But they can. He's just taking our resources right now. You ain't seen nothing yet. Until he starts honing in on the people. Turn to me or else. Let my people go or else. One more plague. Israel plunders the Egyptians. And in our day, do you suppose God still sends plagues in various forms?
Absolutely.
Yes. I do. I do.
I think America is experiencing a plague right now because the White House is hardening their heart. It's already hardened. I think a lot of our democracy, as we know it, is turned over to a reprobate, like so demonically possessed that it would literally take God to open their eyes and for them to straighten their own way. America, we're seeing the people of God right now, the Hebrews of the land of Egypt, if you will, are seeing God rain down vengeance on America. And it's going to get, I'm afraid, if something don't change soon, it's going to continue to wax worse.
I think about...
I think we are closer than we can even imagine.
Oh,
Let's do the base. Well, let's back up. Let's do from the 70s forward in storms. When we were kids growing up, you didn't see what we see today. We want to blame floods and all this on well, it was the timber people that done this or the mining outfit that done this. It was all this. But our storms have tenfold.
the likes of which we
Greater
have never
than
seen.
tenfold. If you look at your statistics when they do the news on the tornadoes and the typhoons and all that, look at your statistics how everything has grew. Okay? Then you step into COVID and look what happened during COVID, which we know, or we think we know where COVID comes from, and we're knowing now, we're seeing now that how many people that it has killed. Right. And not only that it has killed, but it is killing today. Absolutely. People are dying today with heart failure that is being said the heart failure was induced by the shots during COVID. Okay, now we have this is a small case out here. These are bees. We see the bees. Right now the bees are killing people that they had never been affected. Absolutely. We have been died this week in Raleigh County. A bee sting. These are mild. The Bible has always, from the beginning until now, the Bible has always repeated itself. You look at all your great,
The Great
the Romans,
Tribulation.
the Babylonians, the Persians, the Medes, and all of those have failed. I'm afraid the United States is a kingdom, is a great kingdom that is going to fall. Absolutely. If we don't change things in America, it's going to get just like the Bible says. It'll wax worse and worse. And I believe that all these things we're seeing are minute to what God is going to allow upon this earth to get people to come to the Lord. The preachers are doing their job, but still today you can't preach out here and get people to understand how much or how close we're living to the end of time. But you know what? God can get their attention. When it starts affecting you and your family, God's going to get people's attention.
Absolutely.
And I really think that it ain't going to do nothing but that. Worse and worse. We're going to see the things that happen in the beginning. We're going to see them happen in the end to draw God's people to the house of the Lord.
Absolutely.
Can I draw a picture for you? Just, I'm not mentioning. Here recently, there was an individual in a building being praised for this individual. People cheering, unstoppable cheers. The first 7 people to stand on a stage and talk about this person, talked about this person's advances in Planned Parenthood and what they were going to do for Planned Parenthood, which is abortions, which is murdering the infant in the womb.
Sacrifice.
It is sacrifice. And as these people were standing and applauding, and I remove names, you can do your own research, but I remove names not because I care to tell you who it was, but because I want you to see that if it wasn't this person and it was somebody else, would you be standing for it? This person is being cheered on by a crowd, and the cheers get louder and louder and louder and louder. And the more they talk about murdering babies, the louder the cheers get. The more they talk about sacrificing and how it's my body. You know what I come in conclusion to the other day? That's a counterfeit. For transgenders to say it is my body, and for women to say it is my body, Christ said, eat, for it is my body. It is all spiritual. Let you understand something. While this person was being lifted up with cheers, there were performers on stage by the names of the most demonic that I can ever imagine that have videos out where they turn into serpents and eat people. If that's not dance in front of blood moons. And while this person is being lifted up on a pedestal and being sung to by all of these people, 25 babies were aborted in a bus outside the door of this building. Should we have anything at all to do with that?
Absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
And that is who is running for president. Do your research, people. It is important to know in the spiritual realm what is going on.
Absolutely.
When all they talk about is aborting babies, and all they talk, I fear that we haven't seen the likes of the plagues of
we
Egypt.
ain't.
That we have no idea what America is in for. Should we not turn if my people, which are called, let my people go, is what he was saying. And God said, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. You know what? If you say, I don't do anything wicked, I don't need to turn from my ways, get on your face and cry out as an apology to God for those that do. And you live in this United States. Get on your face and apologize, because we haven't seen the likes of any of these plagues yet. We have seen minute things. We have seen inconveniencing things throughout our history. But I tell you right now, if we lift up someone in power, we've lost all power. We've lost all power. Please do your research.
If you go back in the Bible, if the king was wicked, the nation failed.
Yes.
Like it's not brain surgery. I'm not even talking about a Democratic or Republican Party, though I should. Because they're both corrupt.
Well, the democracy is corrupt. We were set up for failure from the get-go because we were pitted one party against another party. And a nation divided against itself will not stand.
Absolutely.
It should be about
God's side and the other side.
Yes.
And that's what it is about.
Yes.
But people have become so carnal that they're no longer in tune with the spiritual realm of it. So regardless of who it is on that said ticket, they're going to vote for them. All because I've been a Democrat or I've been a Republican my whole life. I'm not changing now. how can you not be changed? When the Spirit of God is in you. How?
And if the Spirit of God dwells in you,
Yes.
how can you not change your mind
Absolutely.
when you see the spirit of something else? See, these men, these magicians here in front of Pharaoh, they had a spirit dwelling in them too.
Absolutely.
Just like Moses and Aaron had a spirit dwelling in them. They could cast down a rod and it turned into a serpent. These men no doubtedly had a spirit residing in them too, because they were able to do sorcery. And they were able, and if it's not of God, then it's of the devil. And so these people had power too. And even them come to the realization, this is God.
Right, this is the Pharaoh.
I'm wrong, and this is right.
Right.
We have to be changed. We have to be changed. And if you're in here today and the Spirit of God dwells in you, and talk of any kind like this makes you angry,
Check your heart.
you might be
Maybe harden, you probably like Pharaoh, hardening your heart.
Watch that. These things did not affect God's people.
Absolutely.
They did.
Absolutely.
All these plagues, everything that happened did not. Is that more reason that we should serve God?
Absolutely.
Hey, they're going to come. These things are going to come. But if you're a chosen, if you're God's child, if you're a son or a daughter of God, they will not affect you.
Absolutely.
It will not happen. God will take us out of here.
Absolutely.
Anything happen to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that.
It's just like Terry was saying, he'll make a way out. He made a way out for the Israelites through the Red Sea. He's going to make a way out for us through his tongue.
Absolutely.
And I need you to understand this. There are some people out there that would say, I don't care who you're voting against, I'm voting for Trump. And
Right.
there are some people out there that says, I don't care who the Democrats nominate to be their president. If they can beat Trump, that's who I'm voting for. Neither of those are reasons to vote.
No.
God, who?
Right.
Who do you want?
Who's the best
Who can
candidate?
you use? Who will let you reign supreme? Who?
Right, man.
Who? We should be seeking God. We shouldn't be pledging allegiance to any Democratic party.
No.
We should be seeking the face of God and
Absolutely.
saying, what can we do
Absolutely.
to turn the direction of this nation around and get a people headed in a direction that chases our heart?
Well, I gotta say this because I feel it burning in my sanctified soul. People worship Trump. There is people, Christians,
Absolutely.
godly, church-going
Absolutely.
people that thinks that Trump is the king.
Absolutely.
He's the answer. Trump is not the answer.
No.
Kamala Harris is not the answer. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, that's the key. That's the key to the kingdom.
Exactly.
We humble ourselves and pray. I'm not telling you how to vote. Vote the I am too, bless God. Vote the Bible. Vote the Bible.
But
If you're going to kill babies, that is
Absolutely.
completely against the Word of God.
But I have a problem here because I hear people say, come November, we're going to find out. You can find out now.
Absolutely.
If my people would humble
Absolutely.
themselves, if we would find a private place, if we would get a relationship with God,
Absolutely.
we can know that no matter who gets elected in
Jesus
November,
is king.
Jesus is king, and I ain't going to face none of that nonsense that they're going to do.
Absolutely.
Get your mind on Him and be led by the Spirit, and the Spirit will tell you who to vote for. If we've got to go in a booth and vote. But my thing is to stop saying that as of November we'll know which direction we're headed. No, we can know now, but it's going to require work from you and I.
The first political debate of this campaign, you can ask him, I told her, I said, my heart breaks. This is all we got to choose from.
Right.
We got two people, and ain't neither one of them going, there's neither one of
And
them.
it's not all we got to choose
The
from.
spiritual warfare.
That's the
going on
key
in
right
the
there.
United States today. But this is who we got before us. And God only knows what's going to transpire come November. But I can tell you this, God's still in control.
Absolutely.
He's going to make sure that whatever comes, and big deal, it doesn't matter who gets it. It doesn't matter who gets it. But we got to look at the big picture. Whoever gets it, God said, I'll take care of my own. I'll
Absolutely.
take care of my children for you.
If my people,
Yes.
my people,
Pharaoh's position had nothing to do with the power of God.
no,
Whoever was in that position it didn't matter. God was
God
going
still
to
trumped
rule.
them.
Regardless, I just looked it up on my phone in Isaiah 96, for us a child is born, and unto us is given, the government shall rest upon us.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And
The
his name
government.
shall be called Wonderful Counselor. When we put him in his rightful place,
Come on.
it won't matter who's in the government.
Absolutely.
And please, I was praying the other day, and this came upon me, and I think it's important because I think the Bible says we're 2 or 3. But I think the last election, the election before, the last election, everybody thought Trump had it in the bag, right?
Went to bed thinking that.
Went to bed thinking Trump had it in the bag. But the election before that, when we were at the cusp of one side versus a very different side, well, no matter how you looked at it, there was a call to prayer.
Absolutely.
From July, August, September, October, November, churches were congregating to pray. And I don't see anybody rising up to pray. So I don't think that November's looking too good for God's people right now. My thing is you and I, if we're not going to rise as a nation to pray and ask God to save us and to save His people and to spare us, then you